Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Unison of Geek Show. And today I'm going to read about Peter and Wendy. This was written by J.M. Barrie and the first edition. To tell you about this book, so many people think they know J.M. Barrie's classic tale of the mysterious boy Peter Pan, who never grows up, and of the young girl Wendy, who flies into fantasy island of Neverland. But while the story of Peter Pan has been told again over the years, Peter and Wendy itself retains its ability to surprise the unwary reader. Despite its child appropriate premise, a darkness lurks below the story surface, reflective of the sad real life events which haunted Barry himself. The novel's sarcastic and opinionated reflective of the sad real life opinionated narrator and its engagement of heady themes, including death, the power of imagination, and the bittersweetness of growing up. Lent as a text in-depth complexity that explains its resonance that with adult readers since its 1911 publication. Both a celebration of childhood innocence and a mourning elegy about its over romanticization, Barry's creation simultaneously entertains the young, speaks to adults longing for the past golden era, and offers an ahead of its time exploration of children's emotional and moral development. Summaries go like this: that growing up is inevitable. Wendy understood this by the time she was 2. Her mother, Mrs. Darley, is a beautiful woman and also a bit mysterious. She has a dimple in the corner of her mouth, which is like a kiss that no person can ever claim. Mr. Darling's chief concern is doing things like other people, and though Mr. Darling knows all about stocks and shares, the Darlings aren't rich. So Wendy and her brothers John and Michael have a Newfoundland dog named Nana for a pup nurse. Mrs. Darling initially encounters Peter Pan while sorting through her children's thoughts. Mrs. Darling has vague memories of Peter Pan from her childhood but doubts his reality. Wendy insists, however, that Peter sometimes comes to visit at night. One evening, Mrs. Darling sees Peter fly in through the nursery window. Nana chases Peter out of the window and catches his shadow in her mouth. Mrs. Darling puts the shadow in a drawer but doesn't tell Mr. Darling about it until next week later. The fateful night, Mr. Darling throws a fit because his tie won't tie, and Michael refuses to take his medicine. Mr. Darling brags that he never avoids medicine, though in truth he has hidden this. Wendy finds her father's medicine and brings it to him. Helpfully, Michael and Mr. Darling bicker over who has to take their first dose. Mr. Darling tricks Michael into taking his dose, then pours his own into Nana's bowl. When Nana discovers the trick, Mr. Darling gets embarrassed and ties her up outside. Mr. and Mrs. Darling depart to attend a party. Once the grown-ups are gone, Peter Pan and a fairy named Tinkerbell enter the nursery and begin looking for Peter's shadow. Tink finds the shadow and Peter tries to reattach it to himself using soap. When this fails, he begins to cry. Wendy wakes up and Peter introduces himself. Wendy sews Peter's shadow back on, but Peter behaves as if he accomplished the task himself. When Wendy protests, Peter flatters her. She offers him a kiss, but he doesn't know what it means. So she gives him a thimble. He in return gives her a button, which she puts on her necklace. Peter tells Wendy he ran away to go live with the fairies because he didn't want to grow up. He introduces Tinkerbell, who behaves rudely. Peter tells Wendy that he lives with the lost boys in Netherlands, and he came to a nursery to hear stories. Wendy asks to go to Neverland, and Peter becomes excited at the idea of Wendy acting as a mother to him and the lost boys. He sprinkles fairy dust on her. John and Michael teaches them how to fly. The group flies toward Neverland for several days and nights. Along the way, Peter sometimes leaves them to have other adventures and doesn't always remember who they are when he returns. They finally arrive in Neverland, the sun guiding their way with a million golden arrows. Peter tells them about the island's pirate pirates. Captain James Hook leads them and with an iron hook instead of right hand. As they arrive, the pirates fire their cannon at the group, separating them from one another. Left alone with Wendy, the jealous Tinkerbell decides to get rid of her. The number of lost boys in Neverland fluctuates. Some die in battle. Peter thins out others when they grow too old. The current boys are Tootles, Nits, Slightly, Curly, and the twins. The pirates hunting the boys around the island include the oddly lovable Smee and Hook himself, a handsome man refined in both speeches and dress. Behind the pirates come to the Indians with their brave princess, Tiger Lily. Hungry animals follow the Indians, including a huge crocodile. As he looks for the lost boys, Hook talks about his desire to kill Peter Pan, who fed his hand to the crocodile. Only reason Hook has been able to evade the crocodile since then. It is then best swallowed a tickling claw, a large sturdy mushroom that Hook sits on and grows hot. And he and Simba realize that it's stopping up a smoking chimney, and they have found the lost boy's home. Hook comes up with the plot to kill the lost boy but leaves when he hears the tickling crocodile. The lost boys emerge the spot, Wendy's over her head. Tinkerbell appears and tells them that Peter wants to kill the flying figure. Tootles shoots down Wendy with his bow and arrow. Peter appears and tells the lost boy that he has bought them a mother. The boy leads Peter to Wendy's body, and Tootles explains that he killed her. Peter moves to stab Tootles with his knife, but Wendy's arm restrains him. She's alive. The button Peter gave her deflected the arrow. When he hears the whole thing played in the incident, Peter temporarily banishes her. Michael and John arrive, and the boys build a special house for Wendy. Wendy works hard to be a good mother for the lost boys, even if, as sometimes people will say, the meals she cooks are only imaginary ones. Time passes, but Wendy feels confident that her parents will be waiting whenever she and her brothers decide to return home. Wendy, Peter, and the Lost Boy have so many adventures, both real and imagined, that it would be impossible to tell them all. Once, for instance, Peter and the Lost Boys were fighting the Indians and decided to switch sides mid battle. Another time, Tinkerbell tried to float a sleeping Wendy out of Netherland on a leaf. Then there was a day Peter saved the Never bird from a trouble, a favor the bird had returned later at the lagoon. The lagoon looks like the shapes and colors you see when you close your eyes slightly. Wendy, Peter, and the Lost Boy spend many days swimming there, watching the mermaids. Wendy always makes sure the boys rest on a rock in the middle of the lagoon for 30 minutes after their lunch. One day during the rest time, Peter realizes pirates are approaching. Everyone dives into the water to hide. A boat appears carrying Smee, another pirate Starkly, and a prisoner Tiger Lily. The pirates plan to leave Tiger Lily on the rock to drown her as the tide rises. Peter intimates Hook's voice commanding the pirates to free Tiger Lily. The plan succeeds, but then the real Hook appears who asks about Tiger Lily. When the pirates explain why they had let her go, Hook thinks the order came from some kind of ghost. He calls to the ghost, and Peter, still speaking in his voice, answers. Peter claims to be the real Hook and accuses Hook of being a court fish, making even Hook himself doubtful of his identity. Hook then tricks Peter into revealing himself. A fight breaks out. Peter and Hook battle on the rock. Peter is winning, but he notices that Hook is lower on the rock. In an attempt to make a fight fair, he offers his hand to Hook to help him higher. Hook, in response, bites Peter, who, utterly dismayed at Hook's foul play, fails to defend himself, and against Hook's claw, Hook sinks back to his boat, and the lost boy fly home. Michael kites appear, and Peter ties Wendy to it so that she can get back to shore. Peter, too hurt to fly, is certain he will drown once the tide comes, but comforts himself with that idea that death will prove the ultimate adventure. As the water rises, Peter watches a mysterious object move through the lagoon. He realizes it's a never bird, paddling toward him on her nest. She wants to save Peter and offers him her nest, even though her eggs are still inside. Peter grabs a hat left by one of the pirates and places the eggs in it. The bird immediately returns to sit on her eggs, and Peter sets sails on the nest. He returns home safely, as does Wendy, and everyone celebrates. Because Peter saved Tiger Lily, her tribe guards the lost boy homes from the pirates. On evening after dinner, Peter and Wendy are playing at being the lost boy's parents. Suddenly, Peter asks Wendy to confirm that it's all a game. He isn't really the boy's father. Wendy confirms this, but then asks Peter about his feelings for her. Peter replies that he feels her like a son for his mother. This declaration upsets Wendy, which confuses Peter. The bad feelings soon dissipate. However, everyone dances together. Wendy then puts them to the bed and tells a story. Wendy tells the story of a couple named Mr. and Mrs. Darling, their three children, and their dog, Nana. Wendy asks the boys to think how the parents must have felt when their children flew away to Neverland. She then describes the children returning home and finding the nursery window still open and their parents waiting for them. Peter tells Wendy that she is wrong about the timeless unconditional love for mothers. He relates how he once returned home to his mother but found the window closed and a new child in his bed. Frightened, Wendy decides she and her brothers must go back right away. Peter pretends he is indifferent, but the truth is quite upset. Wendy offers to let Peter and the lost boy come home with her, all but Peter didn't accept her invitation. He bids them goodbye and Wendy reminds him to take his medicine. Just as they are about to depart, they hear the terrible battle begin, a war around between the pirates and Indians. Many Indians die, though Tiger Lily and a small group of warriors escape. Whose true target, however, is Peter Pan. Peter Pan's confident attitudes wear on Hook's nerve after the battle. The pirates listening at reach entrances. Here, Peter Pan tells the boys that if the Indians win, they will sound their drums. So the pirates beat their drums. Wendy and the good boys say goodbye to Peter and climb out of the house. After sending the boys and Wendy off the ship with his crew, Hook enters the boys' underground home. There he finds Peter asleep. Hook poisons Peter medicine and they leave. Tinkerbell wakes Peter to tell them what had happened to Wendy and the lost boy. Peter is eager to rescue, but Wendy decides to take his medicine first. Tink tells him the medicine has been poisoned, but Peter doesn't believe her. To save him, Tinkerbell drinks the medicine and immediately begins dying. She says can only recover if children demonstrate that they believe in fairies. Peter calls all the sleeping children pleasantly dreaming about Neverland to clap their hands to show they believe. Not all the children clap, but enough to allow Tink to get well again. Peter flies forward the pirate ship, promising him that his contest between Hook and himself will be their last. Aboard the pirate ship, Hook paces along the deck, thinking about his win over Peter and the lost boy. Somehow he's unsatisfied. He thinks about the past. He went to the elite school, and that experience still guides him. He's particularly obsessed with correct behavior, yet he also worries about that his concern might end. And of itself, then a sign he's lacking proper decorum. His crew's boorish behavior roses Hook from his musings, and he orders that the lost boys and Windy be brought on deck. He offers to take two of the boys as part of crew, but they all refuse. Hook then demands that Windy make a speech to the boys before he make them walk the plank, which he does. Suddenly, Hook hears tickling. He collapses in fear, and his pirates gather around him. On his way, uh, on his way to Hook's ship, Peter passes the crocodile. He notices it is no longer tickling, so he begins making sound himself. So as any beats who hear it will think in the crocodile and leave him alone. Meanwhile, the crocodile follows Peter. One of the ship, Peter sees the sound effect on the pirates and becomes pleased with his own trickery. He hides in the ship's cabin and stops making tickling sound. Hook believes orders a pirate to fetch a whip from the cabin. Pirate enters the cabin and dies as Peter crows repeatedly. Another goes in and also dies from Peter's reach. Hook decides to send the lost boy into the cabin to either kill everyone in there or die trying. Inside the cabin, Peter leads the boys. He then sneaks back out of the cabin, unties Windy, and takes her place wearing her shawl. The crows again to rally his unstood crew. Hook suggests throwing Wendy overboard since women are bad luck on ships. As the pirates approach Iris, Wendy Peter relieves himself. The pirates and lost boys begin fighting. At one point, Peter stabs Hook, who then drops his sword, but Peter invites him to pick it up. Peter Hook asks Peter who is he, and Peter replies, depressed Hook. He feels Peter's response is ultimate example of proper behavior in that it shows utter lack of thought about himself. Hook begins to fight again, but is now narrowly concerned with the Peter's misbehavior. On impulse, Hook jumps up on a railing. He motions to Peter to kick him overboard, and then Peter compiles. Hook falls unhappy in the thought that Peter behaved badly. Straight into the crocodile's mouth, the surviving pirates flee, and Windy puts the boys to bed. That night, Peter appears. Peter has nightmares, and Wendy holds and comforts him. Meanwhile, back in London, things have changed for Mr. and Mrs. Darling. They never go out anymore, and Mr. Darling has taken up residence in Nana's kennel. He doesn't even leave it to go work, but rather has the kennel carried to his office. For her part, Mrs. Darling just waits sadly for her children's return. One evening, Mr. Darling asks her to play the piano. She compiles as she leaves the nursery. Peter enters. He comes to shut the nursery window so Wendy will believe that her mother no longer wants her. Peter watches as Mr. Darling wants to cry. He feels she is somehow tapping on his heart, and he relents reopening the window. Wendy and her brother fly into their nursery. They are confused at seeing their father in the kennel, but happy to hear their mother at the piano. They decide to get their beds and let their mother discover them there. But when Mrs. Darling comes back to the nursery, she thinks she is dreaming, so the children go to her. The entire family embraces while Peter watches from the window. When the lost boys appear, Mr. and Valdese agree to adopt them. Mrs. Darling wants to adopt Peter, but he repulses her. He tries to attempt Windy back to Neville, but Mrs. Darling tells Windy that she herself needs a mother. Ultimately, they decide Peter can fetch Windy once a year to go to his spring cleaning. Before he leaves, he takes the kiss from Mrs. Darling that no one else could ever capture. Peter comes for Windy next year, but she finds he has forgotten all the previous adventures they shared together. The following Peter forgets to come at all. He comes the year after, but then doesn't reappear for a long time. Windy and the boys grow up. She marries and has a daughter named Jane, who sleeps in Windy's old nursery and talks to about Netherland Peter Pan. One night, Peter flies back in the nursery. He hasn't changed. Peter tells Windy that he has come to fetch her spring cleaning. She replies that she can no longer fly, explaining that she is a grown woman. Peter is afraid and distraught, and Windy, unsure how to help him, leaves the room. Jane walks, and by the time Windy returns, Jane is flying around the room. Windy permits Jane to go to Peter to his cleaning. Time passes, and Windy grows even older. Jane grows up and has a daughter named Margaret, who also goes with Peter to Neverland. Someday, Margaret will have a daughter who will do the same, and so it will go, as long as the children remains unchanged. So this is the story of the summary of the Peter Pan and Wendy. And then in part two, I will tell you the review of the story. So thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye.